Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. So today we're going to jump headfirst into a pretty wild case
Yeah.
of suspected real estate fraud that went down in Kyiv.
hmm
And this one focuses on an apartment owned by Alexander Viktorovich Podrezov.
All right. Sounds juicy.
It is, it is. And thankfully, we actually have a lot to work with here. I mean, you've given me
Yeah.
court decisions from case number 755-983-823, official correspondence from criminal proceeding number 120231000, 4020-49, and just a whole stack of supporting documents.
Nice.
So we've got a really good picture of,
All right. So we got a lot to work with here.
yeah, like a detailed chronology of everything that went down.
Yeah.
Um, and I know that what you're really interested in is kind of like how all these pieces fit together, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to go through all this very carefully to try to understand like the main events, the connections between everyone involved, and like what this tells us about maybe some bigger like systemic issues.
Yeah, for sure. And there are a few things you flagged for me that we should definitely focus on. So, like, first of all, I really want to make sure we're pronouncing all these Slavic names
Right.
and street names and institutions correctly just for you.
Yeah, and it's a lot, so
Yeah.
we'll try our best.
We'll do our best. But then also, really importantly, Mr. Podrezov's alibi.
Right.
We have to look at that really closely.
Yes.
And also the decision made by the appeal court
hmm
and why the police and Ministry of Justice didn't seem to do anything.
Right. And then there's also that connection between the buyer and the notary, Sakharchenko, right?
Yeah, that's a big one.
And then there's that whole story about the Borshuliak family and like how
Right.
corrupt this whole thing could be.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is. It feels like one of those like really complex puzzles
Yeah.
where we just have like all these pieces and we got to try to put it all together.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so let's get started. Let's just start with the very basic facts.
Okay, so first, the property. Alexander Viktorovich Podrezov, and I hope I'm saying that right for you.
Yeah.
Podrezov Alexander Viktorovich. He was the owner of apartment number 22 at 22 Ostafia Dashkevicha Street. That's Ostafia Dashkevicha Street in Kyiv. He bought it back on November 18th, 2014.
Okay.
And that was through a contract with notary Solomonova.
Okay. And just to be clear, like timeline-wise,
Yeah.
Mr. Podrezov hadn't actually lived in the apartment himself since early 2020.
Okay.
There were tenants in there.
Oh.
But importantly, and this is for his alibi,
Right.
he left Ukraine on February 22nd, 2022. This is confirmed by Border Service records.
Okay, got it. So out of the country.
Out of the country.
And then to make it even clearer, he got temporary consular registration in Barcelona on August 8th, 2022.
Got it. Okay, so he's out of the country.
Yep.
Now let's fast forward to May 2023.
Okay.
That's when things start to get a little fishy.
All right, so on May 23rd,
Yeah.
there's this fake power of attorney that pops up, and it's supposedly from Mr. Podrezov, and it was certified in Kharkiv by a private notary. Her name's Popras.
Okay.
Popras. Full name, Popras Yulia Viktorovna Popras. And this power of attorney, it said that Ole Ihorovich Borshuliak could get duplicate copies of the apartment's document.
Okay, so wait, so a power of attorney, that means that Mr. Podrezov would have to like be there in
Right.
person
Yeah,
to
exactly.
sign that, right?
Yeah, you got to be there, show your ID, the whole thing.
Okay, so this is already sounding really suspicious, and then here's where the forgery gets really obvious.
Okay, lay it on me.
So the passport that was used for this power of attorney, it had Mr. Podrezov's correct passport number, which is EK865194.
Wow.
But the picture was totally different. It showed someone with short hair, but Mr. Podrezov has long hair.
Okay, so right off the bat, that's a huge red flag.
Yeah. And it gets worse. The passport also had the wrong seals and stamps.
Oh, wow.
And even the registration address was wrong. It said Severodonetsk instead of Kyiv.
Okay, so they messed up a lot of things, but they got the passport number right.
Yeah, which is strange.
That is weird. It makes you think, like, did they have some of his info beforehand?
Right. Like, how did they get that right if everything else is wrong?
Yeah, exactly. And for the notary, Popras, to just sign off on that?
Right.
I mean, come on.
It makes you wonder how closely they're really looking at these things.
Exactly.
And then just a few days later, on May 29th, someone pretending to be Mr. Podrezov called the Kyiv notary Salmanova.
Okay.
Remember, she's the one who handled the original sale back in 2014.
Right, right.
And they asked for replacement documents for the apartment.
Bold move.
And this phone call, get this, was recorded.
Oh, really? Okay, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
So they tried to go through the original notary,
Yeah.
but maybe with fake document.
Maybe. It seems like they were testing the waters to see if they could get the documents easily.
Yeah, like a trial run. Classic move.
Yeah, exactly. And then things really escalate in June 2023. That's when the apartment was actually stolen.
Okay, so what happened?
So on June 4th, Mr. Podrazov, he's obviously figured out that something's wrong.
Yeah.
And so he emails a crime report to the Dnipropetrovsky Police Department in Kiev.
Good. So he's reporting the fraud?
Yeah, he's saying, hey, someone's trying to steal my apartment.
Smart move.
And then 2 days later, on June 6th, they actually open criminal proceedings. Number 120-2330-00000200049. And they're investigating attempted fraud and large-scale fraud.
Okay, so the wheels of justice are turning, at least on paper.
Right. But here's where it gets a little weird. The police say that Mr. Podrazov became a victim in this case on June 6th.
Okay.
But Mr. Podrazov says he didn't actually know that officially until his lawyer asked about it on March 10th, 2025.
Wait, so they didn't tell him he was a victim for like almost 2 years?
Yeah, almost 2 years later.
That's really strange.
Right. It's a long time.
It makes you wonder how seriously they were taking his case.
Exactly. And then just a day after that, on June 7th, the fraudsters, they call notary, Solomonova again.
Okay.
But this time, they don't even mention the fake power attorney.
So they dropped that whole Kharkiv thing.
Yeah, like it never happened.
Interesting. So it seems like Solomonova wasn't falling for their tricks.
Yeah, I think she was being cautious, and she probably wouldn't go along with it.
Makes sense.
But then, just 2 days later, on June 9th, even though there's a police report filed about all this,
Right.
the apartment is actually sold.
No way.
Yeah.
So they found a way to do it anyway.
They found another way.
Yeah.
And it was sold to Katerina Volodymyrovna Krasnojona by a different notary, a guy named Tarzarievich Sakharchenko.
Okay, so a different notary, same game.
Yeah, pretty much. And they used that same forged passport
Oh, wow.
and an old-style sales agreement.
Old style. Like, what does that mean?
I guess they use like a template that's not used anymore, maybe to try to avoid some security features or something.
Interesting. Trying to be sneaky.
Yeah, but here's a big red flag. Notary Zakharchenko's file, it was missing a copy of the seller's, Mr. Podrazov's, tax ID number.
Okay, so that's not good. I mean, that's like a basic document you need for these things.
Yeah, it's essential, like a huge procedural violation.
Yeah, either Zakharchenko is really sloppy or something's not right here.
Right. It's really suspicious.
Yeah.
And then, on top of that, there's this property valuation report
Okay.
from the same day, June 9th, 2023. And it's done by a company called Tovio Tisankaye Mina Ukrayi, which basically means Property Valuation Ukraine LLC.
Got it. So they got the apartment valued. What's wrong with that?
Well, the director of this company, his name was Farkhod Ibrahimovich Aslanov, and he's a citizen of Tajikistan.
Okay. Foreign national.
Yeah, and they valued the apartment at just over 1 million hryvnia, which Mr. Podrazov says is way too low.
So undervalued property. That's another classic.
Right. And this company, there are so many red flags.
Like what?
It's registered at a mass registration address,
Okay, so that's suspicious.
which basically means a bunch of shady businesses are all registered at the same address.
Right, right.
And the director, as I said, he's not even Ukrainian.
Yeah, that's definitely raising some eyebrows.
And here's the kicker. There was actually a separate criminal case opened against this valuation company.
Really?
Yeah, case number 120241050A0001389. And they were being investigated for things like undervaluing properties.
Wow. Okay, so they're repeat offenders.
Yeah, and their appraiser certificate was even annulled on June 25th, 2024.
So a year later, they were shut down.
Pretty much.
That's pretty damning evidence. I mean, this valuation company stinks.
Yeah, it does. And to make matters even worse, Mr. Podrazov says that Krasnosona, the buyer, she never showed proof that she actually paid for the apartment.
Seriously. So no money trail.
Nothing. So it really looks like the whole thing was fake.
Yeah, it's looking more and more like a setup.
Right. So then, between June 12th and 14th, Mr. Podrazov, he supplements his police report with all the new details, like about the sale, the forged documents. He's giving them everything.
Okay, good. So he's keeping the police updated.
Yeah. And then, reportedly, around June 14th, the police actually planned a sting operation to try and catch these guys.
Oh, a sting operation.
Yeah. But it failed. For some reason, it didn't work out.
That's fishy.
Right. And some people think that maybe someone tipped them off. Like maybe someone connected to the Borschuliak family.
Oh, right, because they were involved in that fake power of attorney thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a chance that they had someone on the inside.
That's a scary thought.
It is. And then in July 2023, Mr. Podrezov decides, okay, I'm going to fight this in court.
Okay, so he's taking legal action.
Yeah. He sues Krasnozona in the Dniprovsky-Dniprovsky District Court.
Okay.
This is case number 755-983-823.
All right, and what's he trying to do?
He wants the sale to be invalidated
Mm-hmm.
and to get his apartment back.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And he also names notary Zakharchenko as a third party in the case.
So he's going after the notary, too.
Yeah, because he's involved in all this too.
Right.
And then on July 1st, Mr. Podrezov also files a complaint against Zakharchenko's registration of the sale.
Okay, so he's hitting him from all sides.
He's going after every angle.
Yeah.
He files this with the Ministry of Justice of Ukraine. Ministerstwo Justicji Ukrainy.
Okay, so a formal complaint to the ministry.
Yeah, and this gets officially registered on July 6th.
All right, so the paperwork's in motion. Then what?
So then we get to September 2023, and things start to heat up.
Okay, what happened?
So on September 11th, the Dniprovsky District Court, they issue a court order. It's called an ukavola
Okay.
as part of the criminal case, the one we talked about earlier.
Right.
And this order basically gives the investigators permission to look at and seize the original documents from notary Zakharchenko.
Okay, so they're going after the notary's files.
Yeah, and this court order is important because it actually states that the investigation already confirmed that Mr. Podrezov wasn't even in the country on the day of the sale.
Right, because of the border records.
Exactly. They already knew that he left on February 22nd, 2022.
So officially, Mr. Podrezov couldn't have been there to sign anything.
Exactly. And then the very next day, September 12th,
Yeah.
the investigators actually go to Zakharchenko and they take the original documents.
Okay, so they got the evidence.
Yep. And then September 13th is a busy day.
Oh, boy, what happened now?
First, Krasnozona, the buyer, she files a motion to have the whole civil case dismissed.
What? Why?
Well, she argued that it was a criminal matter and that it should be dealt with in the criminal case.
Okay, but what about getting the apartment back?
Yeah, well, she basically said that it wasn't for the civil court to decide. And to support her argument, she actually included copies of that September 11th court order.
One about seizing the documents?
Yeah, and the documents showing that they were actually seized.
Okay, interesting.
And then on that same day, the Ministry of Justice, they issue their decision about Mr. Podrezov's complaint against Zakharchenko.
Oh, right, the one he filed back in July.
Yeah, and they rejected it.
They rejected it, seriously.
Yeah.
But they knew about the forgery and everything?
Well, they said that the registration of the sale was technically done correctly according to the rules.
So they're saying the paperwork looked fine.
Pretty much. And they said that they didn't have the authority to decide whether the documents were forged or not.
What? But that's the whole point.
Right. But they said that's for the courts to decide,
So they're passing the buck.
basically.
Yeah.
And they didn't even refer the case to the Notary Qualification Commission.
So they're not even going to investigate Zakharchenko.
Nope. And Mr. Podrezov, he claims that when the ministry gave him the documents they reviewed, Zakharchenko's actual notary file was missing.
What? Seriously? So they made a decision without even looking at the main file?
It seems that way.
That's so shady.
And remember, this decision came out on the same day that Krasnozona submitted those seizure documents to the court.
Okay, the timing of that is just way too convenient. It really feels like the ministry was trying to help Krasnozona and Zakharchenko.
Yeah, it's very suspicious.
It's a whole mess.
It is. And then, in December 2023, we see Mr. Podrezov trying to cooperate with a criminal investigation, even though he's abroad.
Okay, what did he do?
So on December 4th, he gets summoned for questioning by the police,
Mm-hmm.
but he's in Canada at this point.
Right.
So he sends him an official statement explaining that he can't be there in person,
Okay.
but he says, hey, I can do it remotely.
Oh, like a video call.
Yeah, a video conference.
Hmm.
And he says he'll have his lawyer there, and he'll even use his digital signature to make everything official.
So he's going above and beyond to help.
Yeah, and he even sends a copy of his Canadian driver's license to prove his identity.
Okay, so he's being totally cooperative.
Yeah, which makes what happens later even more strange.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What happens next?
So let's fast forward to October 2024.
Okay.
That's when the Dniprovsky District Court finally makes a decision in Mr. Podrezov's civil case.
All right.
They rule in his favor.
Yes. Finally, some good news.
Right. They order that the apartment should be returned to Mr. Pavrazov because it was taken from him illegally.
Awesome. So he's getting his apartment back.
Well, not quite yet.
What? Why not?
They said they couldn't actually invalidate the sale contract itself
Why not?
because they said it was never legally concluded in the first place because of the fraud.
Oh, I see. So it's like the sale never even happened.
Exactly.
Okay, so
Yeah.
does he get the apartment back or not?
The court said yes, but then Krasnosona appeals the decision.
Of course she does.
And in February 2025, the Kyiv Court of Appeal, they make their decision. They completely overturn the lower court's ruling.
No way. Are you serious?
Yeah. So now Mr. Podrazov is not getting his apartment back.
Ugh, this is so frustrating. Why did they overturn it?
Well, they said there wasn't enough proof that he didn't sign the contract.
What? But he wasn't even in the country.
I know, right? But they specifically said that there was no handwriting expert report.
Okay, but couldn't he have gotten one?
Well, here's the thing. Remember how the police seized the original contract?
Yeah.
The appeal court basically said that Mr. Podrazov should have gotten a handwriting expert to look at that original contract, but he couldn't because the police had it.
Oh, wow. So it's like a catch-22 situation. He needed the original document to prove he didn't sign it, but he couldn't get to it because it was evidence.
Exactly. And they also completely ignored the fact that the investigators had already told the court that he was out of the country.
Seriously, they just ignored that.
Yeah, they said it wasn't enough proof on its own.
That's unbelievable.
I know. And they said that a handwriting expert would have been the only way to really prove it.
So even though he's officially a victim in a criminal investigation for fraud and there's proof he was out of the country, the court is saying he needed a handwriting expert report based on a document he couldn't access.
Yep.
This is so messed up.
It is. And then, to top it all off, they order Mr. Podrazov to pay for Krasnozona's legal fees for the appeal.
Oh, come on. That's just adding insult to injury.
I know.
So what happens next?
So in March 2025, Mr. Podrazov's lawyer, he reaches out to the police again
Okay.
to ask about his victim status in the criminal case.
Right. To see what was going on.
Yeah, and on March 12th, the head of the investigative unit, he replies.
Okay.
He confirms that the case is still open, and he says that Mr. Podrazov has been a victim since June 6th, 2023.
Right. Which we already knew.
Yeah, but then he says that they didn't do the remote question.
The video call.
Yeah, because Mr. Podrazov, quote, didn't inform the investigation about the possibility of questioning via video conference and didn't agree on a time.
Wait, are you serious? But he literally offered to do that back in December.
I know. Remember, he sent them a whole statement about it with his contact info.
Yeah, and his Canadian driver's license.
That's like they completely ignored it.
So either they're lying or they're incredibly incompetent.
Right. It's a really bad look for them.
It is.
So then, on March 25th, Mr. Podrazov, he decides to appeal to the Supreme Court.
Okay, so he's taking it to the highest court.
Yeah, he files a cassation appeal against the February 19th decision.
So he's challenging the appeal court's ruling.
Yeah, but the Supreme Court, they open the case, but they don't suspend the appeal court's decision.
So the sale is still valid for now.
Yeah, and that brings us to the current issue.
Which is?
Even though Mr. Podrazov has asked them multiple times, the police still haven't put a seizure on the apartment.
Really? So they haven't frozen the property? But that's standard procedure, right? Especially in a fraud case like this.
Exactly. It's to stop it from being sold again while the investigation is ongoing.
So why haven't they done it? I mean, that's just asking for trouble.
Right. It's either a huge oversight or they're doing it on purpose.
It's a pretty big oversight. Something doesn't add up.
It doesn't. And it could be that the apartment gets sold again,
Yeah.
which would make this whole situation even more complicated.
Yeah, it's a real mess. Okay, so we've got a lot of pieces here. Let's try to connect them a bit. What about these people involved? Like, who are they? What are their connections?
Okay, so let's start with Olibor Shuliak. Remember, he's the one who was named in that fake power of attorney.
Right. The Kharkiv connection.
Yeah. And he's a former prosecutor.
A former prosecutor.
Yeah. And it seems like he might be a key player in all this.
Okay, so he's got legal experience, maybe knows how to work the system.
Exactly. And then there's his father, Ihor Borshuliak. He's also a former prosecutor.
Another one? Wow, okay. What does he do?
He worked in the prosecutor general's office.
Seriously?
Yeah. And he was even a prosecutor in the Odessa region at one point.
Okay, so these guys have some serious connections.
They do.
Yeah.
And then, get this, Oli's mother, Svetlana Hrinchak, she has a judge.
No way. A judge. Okay, this is getting really interesting.
Right. and she's currently serving in the Rozdilnyansky District Court in the Odessa region.
So they've got connections in the courts, too. This is starting to sound like a real power family.
It does.
And they're all tied to this case somehow.
Yeah, and to make things even more complicated, Ola's wife, Natalia Borshuliak, is a real estate agent.
Okay, so now we're talking about potential access to property information, maybe even insider knowledge. This family is everywhere.
It's a lot. And then we've got Pavel Viktorovich Bondarenko. He's Krasnozona's lawyer.
The buyer's lawyer.
Yeah, and he's a co-owner of this law firm called Legal Advice. EGG, Logish, Juridisna Firma, Lehal Advice.
Okay, so he's representing the buyer in all this.
Yep. And his business partner at Legal Advice, Serhiy Ihorovich Rezi. Guess what? He's also a former prosecutor.
No way! Seriously? Another one?
Yeah. So the buyer's lawyer is working with a former prosecutor.
Okay, that's a little too close for comfort. It's starting to feel like everyone involved in this case is connected somehow.
It really does. And it definitely raises questions about conflicts of interest, influence, and potential corruption. I mean, we've got former and current prosecutors, a judge, and they're all tied to this case.
It's a tangled web.
Yeah.
And it's not a good look for the justice system.
Definitely not. Okay, so now that we have a better sense of who these people are, let's try to figure out how they actually pulled this off.
Yeah, what was their strategy?
So from the very beginning, it looks like they relied heavily on forging documents.
Right, like the passport.
Yeah, the passport for the power of attorney, and then probably another fake passport for the sale with Zakharchenko. And that old-style sales agreement also seems really suspicious.
Yeah, like they were trying to use a document that might not have the latest security features.
Exactly. And we can't forget about that first attempt to use the fake power of attorney with notary Solomonova.
Right, the one who handled the original sale.
Yeah, and it seems like she wasn't fooled, which forced them to change their plan and go for a direct sale with even more forged documents.
So they had a backup plan.
They did. And then there's Zakharchenko, the notary.
Yeah, the one who missed the tax ID number.
Right. I mean, that's either incredibly incompetent,
which is hard to believe,
or he was in on it.
Right, like maybe he was deliberately overlooking things.
Yeah. And then there's that shady valuation company.
Tovies.
Yeah.
Yeah, with its suspiciously low valuation, the foreign director, and the fact that they were already being investigated for similar things.
Right, and their license was revoked later.
It all points to a very deliberate attempt to make the apartment look less valuable than it really was.
And don't forget, Mr. Podrezov says that Krasnozona never even showed proof of payment. Right, which suggests that no money actually changed hands.
So it's possible the whole sale was just a sham, just a way to steal the property.
It seems that way. And then, of course, there are the connections, the potential influence that these people might have used to slow down the investigation or sway the court's decision.
Yeah, that whole network of prosecutors, the judge, the real estate agent, it's really unsettling.
It is. So looking at all this, it's pretty clear that there are some serious legal violations here.
Like what specifically?
Well, first of all, forging documents is a crime in Ukraine. That falls under Article 358 of the Criminal Code of Ukraine, Statya 358 Visum UK Ukraini. And then there's the large-scale fraud, which could be Part 4 of Article 190, Chestina Chidiri Statovinos to UK Ukraini.
Okay, so those are the big ones. And what about the notaries, Popras and Zakharchenko?
Yeah, depending on what they knew and how involved they were, they could be in trouble too.
What kind of trouble?
They could be charged with negligence or even complicity in the fraud.
So they could,